My guy, Rance out here spinning up some straight facts. It's always really fun seeing Rance embodying the one trait that everyone can agree he is: honest. To himself and his ideas, except when it comes to Syl. Hey everyone, Zero in here. Since Rance Quest has finally been translated by MangaGamer after all this time, I decided to take a revisit back to this one. One of my very first videos I ever did was on Rance Quest back in my old format, Visual Novel Primer. Back then, I tried to only talk about mechanics, which means this time around, I can actually just talk about my opinions of Rance Quest as a whole, and how I think about it in terms of its place in the franchise. Rance Quest Magnum is the 8th game in the Rance series, not counting spin-offs or other mini-adventures, which follows the eponymous hero Rance and his journeys throughout the continent, as he seeks adventure, fame, and woman, but mostly just woman. I assume if you are watching this, you already know what Rance is to some extent. However, if you are completely new to the series, go ahead and watch the video I did on the entire series as a whole. I think I covered pretty well on why this franchise has some of the best characters and story I've ever enjoyed in any RPG, even though it's an MMORPG. And I've got a spoiler warning for the last section of it. With that out of the way, let's get back to Rance Quest. Rance Quest takes place right after Sengoku Rance, where Rance moves back to the Free Cities in search of a way to remove the Demon King's curse on the frozen Syl. Its role in the overall story is that it pretty much acts as a collection of side stories that seeks to wrap up and showcase many of the side characters we've seen throughout Rance's journey up until now. This is in preparation for Rance 9 and Rance 10, which are the finale of the series. Outside of side quests, which each are their own individual mini-stories, Rance Quest is centered around two main plotlines: Rance's search for the reclusive Kalar Queen in the original, and Rance's interactions with the AO Church and Crookmorphous in the expansion Magnum. If you are playing the English version, you will be playing Magnum. While these two are the main plotlines and make up the final battles, they only comprise about 25 or so of the 230 quests that exist in Rance Quest, although several of those quests have no combat and are just dialogue. Rance Quest, unlike other entries such as Sengoku Rance, Rance 10, or even Rance 9, is not the kind of game that lends itself to being replayed over and over. It doesn't mean it's bad by any means. I think the gameplay in Rance Quest is actually fun and challenging, and in that aspect I actually rate it higher than Rance 6. I love the fact that in Rance Quest you can basically use any character in the franchise, no matter how weak they actually are. If I had one complaint for it, I think the EXP scaling and resetting makes going through this challenging game a slog at times, as you have to grind EXP a lot in this game. I imagine the developer agrees on some level, since Tada, one of the main developers, released patch 3.86 on November 2019, over 8 years since the game came out, which contained a double EXP mode, and actually connected the end of Rance Quest to the expansion Magnum, since the original ending assumed Magnum never happened. This 3.86 patch will be the version that is shipped with the English MangaGamer edition. The reason why Rance Quest is probably my least favorite modern Rance, if we assume modern Rance to mean Rance 6 and onwards, is because I think that the collection of side stories doesn't really match up to the more focused plots of the other game in the series. While the main storyline of the Kalar Queen is solid, and the AO Church story is actually really good, they both only make up a small fraction of Rance Quest's story. Now with all that said, if you are someone interested in playing the Rance series in any fashion, then I definitely think you should play Rance Quest. If you are someone who has played all of the older Rance games, including the remakes, then it's a ton of fun getting to see all of these minor characters again, and putting some of your favorites on your actual active roster. If you are someone who's only played Rance 6 and Sengoku Rance, then I still recommend playing it, as it acts as a great setup for Rance 9 and Rance 10, both of which I think are frankly amazing. Now that I got my TLDR out of the way, let's get into specifics of what Rance Quest excels in. What makes Rance Quest stand out from the rest of the games in the series is the cast. While it includes plenty of the mainstays, Konami, Queen Leah, Uruka, Shizuka, Maria, Magic, Rizna, and so forth, this time around you get to play as many of the side characters who has only ever made one appearance throughout the series, like Cafe, one of the 5 legendary heroes, Hikari from Rance 1, Ron from Rance 2, Best Girl Karoria from Rance 6, Suzume from Sengoku Rance, and so on. For many of these characters, this is probably the only time you get to play as them ever, and the last time they'll get any sort of spotlight in the series. It's a pretty huge cast, some of which you might remember, and some you might not. Many of them even get their own individual quests. Thanks to how Rance Quest functions as well, unlike in other games in the series, pretty much anyone is viable and can be stat boosted, leaving you able to make your favorite team of whoever you like. Many of them are also hidden behind secrets in the game, which to me is a plus, but to others might be a little annoying. While the cast of Rance Quest is pretty huge, there are obvious main ones that carry the story and are more important than others. The main heroines, so to speak, well, the ones that get the most screen time are Sachiko Centers, Suzume, Crook Morphus, and Riseto Kalar. Sachiko is basically the cell replacement for the game and is kinda boring to be honest. She acts as the straight man to Rance's antics, but is mostly ignored and pretty much becomes unimportant after Rance Quest. Suzume is Suzume. If you liked her in Sengoku Rance, you'll like her here as much as well. For me personally, it's always really nice to see someone who's able to keep up with Rance. The latter two is why I think Rance Quest is a must-play, solely for the introduction of these two characters. Both are crucial figures in each of their respective storylines, although Crook plays a role in both. The first one is obviously Riseto Kalar. Riseto brings a completely new relationship for Rance to tackle, in a sense that this is the first time you really get to see Rance interact with someone that is his child. I mean, obviously it's not his first child, that would be Dark Rance, first appearing in Rance 6, however, due to him hating Rance's guts for basically ruining his mother's life, Felis, another reoccurring character, and Devo, they pretty much want absolutely nothing to do with each other. Riseto, on the other hand, is the first time Rance really tries to wrestle with having a kid, something which he has tried to avoid throughout the series to the extent of using contraception magic. Their interactions are really cute, and it's nice to see how similar Riseto is to Rance in some ways, and how Rance reacts to the idea of actually having a daughter. Riseto herself is a nice character who manages to inherit all of her father's stubbornness, energy, and courage, but none of the bad elements somehow. It's like she's a representation of some of the best parts of Rance. Even as a child, she's incredibly sharp and is able to decide for herself what is right or wrong. Crook Morphus is the other main heroine of Rance Quest, with her being the central figure to the Magnum expansion storyline regarding the AO Church. If there is any character that is important to Rance Quest, it would be Crook. She is introduced as an agent of the church who is knowledgeable about curses and spirits and travels to get rid of them. Crook is a quiet, polite, serious, and almost emotionless girl. Although Crook is someone who treats everyone with the utmost respect and politeness, that's only because she is also willing to do whatever she thinks is necessary in order to accomplish her goals. Which is why it is so incredibly nice to see Crook warm up to Rance throughout the many adventures they go on together throughout this game. She is also just a great, cool character and becomes one of the most important for the rest of the series. Watching her throughout Rance 9 and Rance X is an absolute delight, with Rance Quest being her introductory one. I could talk about Rance's role in this game, but honestly I don't think there's too much to comment on this time around. He's a main character that we all know already, and does all the Rance things we come to expect and not expect. Outside of his interactions with Riseto and Crook, it's good old Rance as usual. Rance does have some fantastic moments, especially in that one particular scene in the cave, which again is pretty touching, as well as one other scene, but that all delves into spoiler territory, so I'll leave that for you to discover. I mentioned this earlier, but I think the two plotlines introduced in Rance Quest are fairly decent. Rance delving into the hidden all-female race of Kalar is about as fun as you expect it to be. What's even better, however, is the AO Church storyline, where for the first time in the entire series, you really get to learn about the mysterious AO Church, a religious organization that is basically the only dominant religion in the entirety of the continent. They have been present throughout each game in the series, but this is the first time where they are really the focus, and there are many revelations regarding not just the church itself, but also about Alice, the company mascot and deity worshipped by the religion, as well as a sneak peek behind the curtain at how the Rance world functions. It's all incredibly fascinating and has elements that are more in common with the darker Kichikuo Rance, the last original Rance game that became non-canon, than anything else. My only real complaint is that again, I wish both were just much longer, especially the AO Church, since it would have been that much more exciting if there was more build-up, and an even cooler finale. But again, Rance Quest is meant to be a side quest celebration with the main storyline as the extra spice on top. And even as it currently stands, it's still a decent story from beginning to end, just it could have been better. As for the gameplay, that's where Rance Quest both excels in and kinda misses in some places. The game doesn't just look retro, but the whole feel of the game is similar to gaming of the past. Rance Quest has a butt ton of unlockable side quests, characters, items, and challenges to get through. While I found it a lot of fun to discover all of these hidden secrets, it does lend itself to the base problem that you end up having to run through old missions over and over, combing for hidden objectives and paths. Some of the secrets also require you to accomplish certain tasks that can be kind of bonkers, like running back and forth on a certain map to maybe unlock a character. Another part of the gameplay that I think is somehow both one of the greatest features of the game, but is also one of the most tedious parts of it, is leveling in Rance Quest. One of the core features I talked about was how anyone can become playable, and that's because in this game, characters when they reach level 35 plus can then be reset back to level 1, where you need to level them back up again, with every subsequent reset dropping 5 levels instead. Each time you do this, the character becomes a bit stronger, absorbs the stat item they are holding, and increases their max level cap. What's good about this is that you can make any character who is normally held back by level caps in other games into an actual strong unit. What's bad about it is that Rance Quest has a ton of grinding to do throughout the game, which is probably the main reason why I don't have any real interest in playing it again. I think I finished specific grinding missions way too many times, and even with a 2 EXP option on, I am still not quite down to go through that again. As for the actual combat of the game, the difficulty here comes from the fact that Rance Quest is separated into many quests that Rance and his companions go on. For each quest, Rance and his allies have a limited number of moves for the entire adventure, and you are allowed to swap members of your party from your roster a limited number of times depending on your charisma or adventure rank. The challenge therefore comes from trying to accomplish a quest before you run out of attacks or characters. Usually most players will tend to have 1 to 2 main teams to swap between, which are all really high leveled, and maybe 1 to 2 backup teams, meaning you usually end up having to train about 15 characters, which does kind of contribute to the whole grinding thing that is needed. And these quests are indeed challenging, where even with 2 main teams who are all equal level with the minimum quest requirement, you will probably run out of moves before reaching the exit. And this isn't even considering the traps that you might run into that might instantly take out party members. Or maybe them just dying from battles. Every quest becomes a matter of resource conservation throughout the entirety of the game, which is pretty fun, until you have to reset everyone and then level them up all again, which isn't quite as much fun. There are tons of secrets hidden in nearly every stage, as well as a ton of other mechanics from item identification, item quality, and so on. I've covered a decent chunk of them in my first video, and the Alisoft wiki has much more information regarding all of that if you need more. While the story is a fairly straightforward affair, I think the gameplay is a bit more complicated, which isn't a bad thing, only that it takes a lot more getting used to. While Rance Quest Magnum is a game that I doubt I will want to revisit anytime soon, that isn't because it is bad by any means. I think the game is honestly pretty dang fun, and the core game mechanics are interesting with tons of different adventures that all have different conditions and challenges. There are dozens of characters, all of which are playable here, and probably nowhere else in the series excluding Kichiko Rance and Rance X. The 2 main storylines are pretty interesting even if they aren't that long, especially the AO Church. The introduction of Cook and Riseto is also pretty dang important, and watching them interact with Rance really makes the game. Even Alkanese, which I didn't really talk about, makes her first appearance in this one. I didn't mention her only because I thought the others were a bit more important for Rance Quest specifically. The only reason why I wouldn't want to revisit Rance Quest is just that I think the game as a whole is a little bit too grindy, wherein by the end, having played before the 2019 EXP double patch, I feel like I've already gone through every single quest so many times that I feel absolutely no urge to start from the beginning again. In order to even reach the 2 main storylines, I have to play for a long time before I even get there. It isn't quite like Sengoku Rance or Rance X, which lends itself to multiple playthroughs, but it's a fun single playthrough experience. If you enjoyed my look at Rance Quest and you like Rance in general, go ahead and watch my video on the series as a whole if you haven't. Although, I imagine if you are a sub of the channel, you probably already have. If not, feel free to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell if you want to support me. Like button, comments, questions, all of that is down there as always, and I'll be seeing you later. Till next time.